Can you hear me? Somebody give me a yay or nay. That would be fantastic. Move my mic a little closer. Can you guys hear me all right? As soon as I get the... Alright. Getting better and better every time. This week I was going to attempt to stream to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the same time, and then I said no. Things are going so well as of late that I didn't want to risk it. So welcome to the, what is this, the fourth official episode of my Live at 5 T3 Sunday night extravaganza. Thank you all for joining, whether you're here live or you're watching this recording. I am oh so grateful that you're here or that you will watch this. Probably going to keep today's episode a little short because, as you can hear, the little bit of huskiness in my voice. So the other morning, 3 days ago, I woke up at pre-dawn and I was half asleep and I smelled something burning, like burning plastic. And I must have just fallen back asleep because next thing I know, I wake up and it's daylight out and my whole trailer is filled with smoke. And then I smell and I'm like, oh crap, that's electrical fire. So really quickly I run out here to, the main area and I start unplugging things. And what had happened was, there's the power that powers the trailer, the outlets and things like that. And we ran another thick gauge industrial cable in so that I could plug some heaters in. Because right now at my desk, it is a balmy 59 degrees, and that's with my tiny little desk heater pretty much blowing right at it. And the drawback of that is, as a chronic Lyme sufferer, one of the major things I have is circulation in my hands. So if my hands get too cold, they become useless for a long time. So everything I do is to keep my hands warm. And, luckily I've got plenty of warm clothes, plenty of warm stuff to sleep in. The night before, or the day before, the electrical issue, at 1:30 in the morning, the power went out. And it was -14 outside. I really quickly threw on my gear, ran to the building next door where the breaker box is, and I couldn't figure it out. So just in the 15 minutes that I was gone checking on that stuff, I come back in here. It was 46 at my desk when I left. 20 minutes later, it was at 32 at my desk. So really quickly I decide, no more work on the computer. I'm going to go seal myself in the bedroom, which is, has a sliding door. And I got my sleeping bags out, my extra blankies. And, sleeping was great. And right before I fell asleep, outside it was -14, and in my bedroom it was 23 degrees. So sometimes it's not that fun to get up that early, that cold. What is really not fun is the fact that I have an outhouse I get to use here. And let me tell you something, you have not lived life till you have gone potty in -22. That's why I'm diligently researching very inexpensive heated toilet seats. I'm not even kidding. because it is so cold in there when you got to go. It's funny though. I had a talk with my body, and I said, "Body, you have a pretty good schedule, for your morning constitutional. You could typically set a watch by it." I said, "However, let's just tweak things a little bit so that anytime I have to use, go number two, sorry for the grossness, let's time it when I'm out grocery shopping or something." And so far, so good. Yeah. But, once again, every new place I visit, every new space I inhabit, as my father taught me to, I look at it as a learning experience. Now, in my lifetime, on January 3rd, 47 years of experience, I have built countless shelters and slept in countless shelters in all manner of weather conditions. And I have learned more about the principles of shelter building, winterizing this trailer, than I have building any, primitive style shelter. It's so funny. I'm always like chasing down a draft. In fact, soon I'm going to go to Goodwill and get a computer chair and sit here, because every time I sit on the pull-out section here, it creates a gap of air that just makes it freezing in here. So I figure if I sit there on the main body of the trailer, that should alleviate that. But anyway, yeah, once again, apologies for my voice. Ever since that electrical smoke morning, my voice hasn't been very well, very good. And then, to top it off, and this is just the, why one day I will write what is, the best dark comedy movie ever about the last few years of my life. That same day that the whole thing happened with the electrical, I went out to Fleet Farm and I got some bigger cables to, make sure my computer stuff is safe. It's all plugged into a battery backup now. And I have enough power coming in to where I don't have to fear blowing any circuits or causing any fires. So that day also was the day they came and emptied the dumpster. And there was some issue with the company, and it was a few weeks late in being picked up. And so I had generated 4 pretty large bags of refuse that I was waiting to put in the dumpster once they emptied it. So I go out, I throw the 4 bags of trash on the roof of my car, and I was heading out to town anyway, so I pulled up to the dumpster, right alongside it. I hop out, I grab the bags off the top, and then I go around the dumpster to get back in the driver door. And I didn't notice a piece of sawn lumber that had just a bare little coating of snow on it. So as I'm walking to reach for my car door handle, all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm like horizontal to the ground. I fall and land on my right hip, which has the nastiest bruise on it. And then I proceeded to smash my skull and my shoulder on the rear passenger door of my car, which the stars were quite beautiful that night. I didn't need a second dose of them that were coming from inside my head. But luckily, us brown men, we have nice, dense, thick skulls, and that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And then, of course, everything I do, I try to turn into a lesson or a way I can teach things better. So I started asking the sacred question about, why did I slip and fall? And the number one reason was it was freezing cold out, I wanted to get the trash off my car so that I could get back in my car and go do my errands. And I was moving a bit faster than I should have been, and not feeling what I was stepping on before I committed my weight. I, made the silly mistake of, walking the complete opposite the way I teach people how to walk, and I paid the price for it. So, as my father used to say, your job is not to believe me. Your job is to prove me right or prove me wrong. And I have tested and retested everything I learned from my father and many other elders, and very infrequently have I found there not to be truth there. And that's what I'm all about these days, is truth. Speaking of truth, for those of you who may have been in the event yesterday, the prayer for the Pine Barrens Zoom session, I was invited to that, by a friend of mine, and I had no expectations, but I figured, as my father's son, somebody with a lot of experience, not just in the Pine Barrens, but in everything that we do, that, maybe this one time my opinion will be valued and someone will ask me to say something. And I'm sitting there watching, people who I taught how to do bow drill 15 years ago get 10 minutes to speak, or people I hired when I worked there get time to speak. And then the thing's over with. And it just reopened a lot of wounds for me. To be in an online space like that with so many people that I care about so much and love so much, most of them at least, and just be completely glossed over, like I have nothing valuable to offer the conversation. It hurts. And I wonder how often people actually try to look at a situation through somebody else's eyes. As they say, walk a mile in their shoes. And I was trying to explain to a dear friend of mine earlier, kind of metaphorically speaking, what it would feel like if it were her. And she's one of the things she does is she teaches French because she's from France. And I said, imagine being in a room full of people who have been studying French for anywhere from a year to 20 plus years. And here you are, somebody who grew up in France and speaks the language fluently, and, they just pretend you don't exist or don't have anything to offer. So it was at that point that I decided that I can no longer, in good faith, in fact, I think it was last session, I mentioned something about writing your own personal declaration of independence, your own boundaries sheet. For my own mental, physical, and spiritual health, and it breaks my heart, but I just can't be a part of that anymore because I've moved so far past it, both in my teaching, both in my understanding of people, places, things, and the natural world, and especially the skills we teach. So that's why I have my Facebook group, the Trackolites, and why I'm doing this podcast, is so that you get the words right from my mouth. Because for far too many years of the last few years, people were steering clear of me because they heard a rumor, or they heard this, or they heard that. And instead of doing the adult thing like I do when I, hear something about a friend that's concerning, as an adult, I call my friend and I say, hey, are you all right? Is everything, what's going on? And, it's so funny how people are so quick to point fingers. But, when it comes time to have the hard conversation or do anything that's uncomfortable, they'd rather just be satisfied with a surface level observation or a surface level thing they saw somebody else post somewhere, which is the complete opposite, one of the many complete opposites of what my father was trying to teach us all those years. Never be satisfied with a surface level observation of anything, because nothing out there in the human-made world, in the natural world, is surface level. Everyone and everything is like an onion, layer upon layer upon layer. And if we truly choose to approach life through, look at life through the eye of the tracker and from the place of the caretaker, do those hidden layers reveal themselves automatically, which is one of the many gifts that was given to me without words once I made it here to Wisconsin and found some stability and some people who truly care about me. Care about me to the point to where right now the camera that is filming this is, I got another Nikon camera body because I was forced to part with the one that my father got me for my last birthday in 2024, that I was forced to sell last year because I was lied to by people I knew and trusted my whole life, and it set my business back a whole year, which was already behind schedule. And, recognizing that me doing my job and living my life without a camera, both from an online teacher perspective, it's like a person with one arm trying to build a house. But photography is one of the things that my father and I were equally as passionate about as nature education. And at the end of his life, it was the thing that brought us back together as father and son. And I've said this to you, a couple times throughout various streams, but, my family was not taught very good communication skills. And so when I left tracker school in 2009, I set about learning how to be a good communicator, learning how to use a wide range of emotions and recognize them in others, just to be the best person I could be. Because, my number one goal in life, is to be a better human being every morning when I wake up than I was the day before. And the fact that I had to part ways with that sacred, the holiest of holy sacred items, something that my dad got for me, not 8 months before he took his final walk, to keep my car from getting taken away from me, to keep my website from getting shut down, all because people were just trying to pretend I didn't exist. And let me tell you something, not only do I exist, but I've done the work to become a better version of my father, a better version of my mother. And because if there's one thing we're meant to do on this earth, it is at least become better versions of our parents. You take the bad stuff and you let it dissipate. Repeat the good things and pass that on to the next generation. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to have close, awesome relationships with my students. I thrive on it. Literally, one of the main things that has kept me going all this time is every day I wake up to at least a few messages from some random students of old or just friends, just, telling me to hang in there and it'll get better. And it has gotten better. And I'm so thankful that I didn't, quote unquote, throw in the towel and just get a job somewhere. Because now that I'm on the other side of it, these last few years were the catalyst for the learning that I needed to do to accelerate my plan of teaching ancient skills in a new way for a new generation in a new era. I remember being a little kid, and actually right about now, let's imagine it's today, but 1985. So today in 1985, I can pretty much guarantee you that I was in a room with 10 other people, and we were putting together the brochures for the next year's class schedule that would get mailed out on New Year's Day. And it used to be this multifaceted affair where you had to stuff these things in this and fold it and then envelope it and label it, and I was always the stamp licker. I think the last time I remember doing it, we had to do 5,000 of them in 1985. And it's so funny because you look at how complicated marketing is nowadays. And that's one thing my father was blessed with is, at my mom's behest, he wrote the book The Tracker, and that was all the marketing he ever needed to do. That's 99.999% of people who ever ended up at Tracker School ended up there because of a word of mouth recommendation from a friend or because they picked up one of my father's books, which has made me accelerate my writing of my books. So that's just some more exciting things to look forward to as my foundation, as my roots sink deeper in here, as I, continue to adapt to the cold. And that's another funny thing. I loved it how, I escaped Oregon with all these lessons and all of this, just the mental lessons and the mental traumas and all that stuff. And then, as if that weren't enough, the creator said, let's test his environmental handling. So I still remember my first morning waking up in Montana. I had a webinar to teach to Europe at 11 a.m. and it was 122 degrees by 11 a.m. and it was so hot that my computer wouldn't even turn on. And then flash forward a few months, the day the power went out, and it took us about half a day to get the power back in here. It was so cold in here that my computer wouldn't even accept a charge. It had to, it wasn't until 4:30 p.m. that my computer was able to turn on. So it was just, just crazy. So I've been tested by the desert and tested by the cold, and it's it's been awesome. And I can't wait until I get out there more and explore. Once I finish, I'm like 98% away from being settled in my ways. One thing I will always thank my father for, and I used to think he was crazy for doing this. Those of you who knew my father knew he was a very organized person. He was so organized, in fact, that he folded his dirty laundry. Still the only person that I've known that's ever done that. But my father was the type of man that everything had a place, and once you got done using that thing, it went right back into its place. And when I moved into my car, I had to radically and drastically slim down 15 years of my life into a Subaru Crosstrek, and I had to come up with systems in order to maintain my sanity and make sure that I always had everything I needed. And now that I live this kind of, I don't know if y'all saw the Marie Kondo show that was on Netflix a while back about like organization. I now have it set up to where like, okay, that box there is all my microphones and my cables, and that box there is all of my, cleaning rags for my camera, and that box there is all my hard drives. And, my orange dry bag is for my dirty laundry, and my green dry bag is for my clean laundry. And I rapidly found out that I was holding on to so many things, most of them sacred items of mine that I found in my various travels, that I had to let go, and I had to literally only take with me and keep the things that were absolutely necessary to live my life and run my business. And it's really quite freeing. I've said this before, but I don't know why this is one of my earliest memories of my father, because he was teaching me about driving, and I think I was probably about 6 years old, and he said, rule number one, son, never always back into a parking place, because that way you can get out easier if there's an emergency. Rule number two, never let your vehicle get below a half a tank of fuel. That way you always have at least a half tank. Rule number three, always carry a complete change of clothing, shoes, socks, everything with you at all times. Some water, some shelf-stable food. And then finally, under his breath, he said, and don't ever, ever, ever own more things than you can't get together in 15 minutes and be the hell out of wherever you are. And as much as I would love to live like that, teaching, requires gear. The skills I teach require tools and raw materials. So if I was just doing this trip as a trip, for fun, I wouldn't need to have 80% of the things that I'm looking at in the behind the fourth wall, as they call it. So I just find it funny that he chose to share those with me. Another thing I'll say about my father and the art and science of coyote teaching is that I have learned, hold on, that's another nice thing. My floor is always 32 degrees, so I don't need a refrigerator. I want some more iced tea, I just pick it up off the floor, and usually, there's not slush in it today, but usually there's slush in it, which makes it nice slushy iced tea. Sorry about this, man. Yeah, I need to insulate. I think once I insulate this floor a little bit better, it'll get a lot warmer in here. But yeah, my father's lessons, things that I thought I had I hate to use the term mastered, because anyone who is a true master of anything will be the first to tell you that the more you learn, the less you realize you actually know. That's why every day I follow my father's advice, and I choose to wake up and empty my cup and approach that day as if I know nothing. Because when you do that, all of a sudden this magical world opens up to you, where everyone and everything has the ability to teach you something, and vice versa. The opposite of that is waking up, stepping into your rut. Before you know it, the day's over, your butt's on the couch watching Netflix, you go to bed, rinse, lather, repeat. 35 years go by, you retire, and then you die. Not for this New Jersey boy. I would much rather always be living on the edge, and always be, having moments like I did the other night when it was so cold in here, because I'll always vividly remember that. Because as my father said, safety, security, and comfort, those are euphemisms for death. But that's a certain kind of safety, a certain kind of comfort. Obviously, we all deserve to be safe from violence. And it's a shame that after millennia we haven't stopped killing each other. Comfort. The only comfort I need is that my hands are warm enough so that I can actually use them. Otherwise, I've got plenty of warm gear. He's more talking about the easy life, the life of convenience that we've built for ourselves. This giant global machine that many people think is running like a finely tuned top, when actually it is an old jalopy with the wheels about to fall off. And every time I go out into public, I'm a people watcher. Not in a creepy way, but in a tracker way. And the other night I went to the grocery store, it was -8, and I watched a guy come out of the grocery store wearing shorts, t-shirt, a hoodie, and knee-high socks and sandals. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, there's a good chance that he probably lives right up the street. But, a lot can happen between here and right up the street. And you find yourself in that weather with that gear on, you might as well just lay down and die. Because, that's why it's funny. People look at me like I'm a caveman around here, because everywhere I go, I'm bundled up in wool, and just my face is poking out, and everyone else is just dressed in like this super lightweight clothing, which brings up another interesting fact. So when I first got here, I recognized the fact I needed some new wool long underwear. So I start going to the basic outdoor stores, and nobody around here sells wool, because everybody is into this battery operated clothing now. I shit you not. Like, you can buy jackets that have power packs in them and they keep you warm. Vests, gloves, and no wool, And honestly, when you're dealing with sub-zero temperatures, one of the primary benefits of wool is that it keeps us warm even if it's wet. But when it's so cold that you can throw a cup of coffee up in the air and it turns to snow, that kind of goes out the window a little bit. So that's why, I'll wear sometimes this North Face jacket with the hollow fill insulation when it's really cold, because it's, it's really warm for its size versus one of my weather wool coats. But, speaking of weather wool, I love those guys so much that I'm going to soon, I'm going to duplicate something I did in Oregon, and that's where I slept. I basically had on my jacket, my poncho, my pants, and my Steger mucklucks, and I made a bed of debris, and I slept out in the open in the rain, and it was a low of 37 and a high of like 40. And when I woke up in the morning, quite comfortably in fact, the water had barely penetrated like halfway through the poncho. And by the time I made it back to my vehicle, the body heat I generated in moving had fully dried me out. So I'm going to take it one step further, and being that I do live on a property where there is a sawmill, I have access to lots of things like shredded bark. So I'm going to build myself a little human-sized raised garden bed that I'm going to fill with shredded bark to build myself a good little bed. And then I'm going to wait and look at the weather forecast until I see the next snowstorm is coming. And I am going to attempt to sleep out in the open, all night and just get covered with snow. I may build some sort of little thing so that I can actually breathe for my head. But yeah, just because I want to try it out, and just, weather wool clothing is the best there is as far as wool goes. And one thing that sucks about down or hollow fill is if this were to get wet, it's just like a wet blanket on you, and it'll freeze, and then you're really done for. So I still go wool wherever possible. The only thing I've been able to find that has any wool in it is Carhartt long underwear, and it's like such a minuscule percent. But anyway, enough about wool. A couple other awesome things I wanted to share with y'all. So, I want to say thank you for, those of you who have been here, every week or watch the recording, because this is my proving grounds, or will become my proving grounds for a lot of these new teachings that I'm going to slowly roll out. It's also going to be a place for interviews. I like to think of what I'm doing right now with my life as making a living documentary that is about me fulfilling the promise I made to my father, while also telling his story and going and visiting with people whose lives were dramatically influenced by his teachings. And I'm just so grateful to where I'm at right at this moment in space and time. Talk about true family and true caretakers. When my friend who lives here found out everything that had been going on over the previous few years, he basically told me to get my ass in the car and come to Wisconsin, and we'll sit around a fire and we'll figure everything out. And ever since I arrived here, I can devote so much more energy to being creative. Not just because, they pitched in and got me a new camera body, but just because I don't have this constant fear of, I will not have a repeat of last year where I only ate 4 out of 7 days a week to keep my website going and to keep my Gmail going. Not going to happen. I think I've gained 8 pounds since I've been here, which is great. My friend Zach is an amazing chef. But talk about a place that it was almost as if the creator, built this place for me to recover from the experience I just had, because here I am amongst people again after a 4-year break of not really having anyone around, and I'm in a place where the many skill sets I've accrued over my lifetime, everything from the ancestral skills I teach to operating heavy equipment, comes in handy. And having an extra set of hands around in an operation like this can be huge. I love, they have 2 wonderful little children, Fern, who's 2.5 months old, and Sawyer's 3 years old, which is bringing me to my next point. Getting to hang out with little kids again is so much fun. So speaking of little kids, so my friend's son is obsessed with this YouTube show, and I'm not going to mention it by name, but the guy basically, all he does is goes around and looks at tractors and fire engines and, talks in a goofy voice. And the production quality is not very good. And this guy makes like $10 million a month. Because a lot of people, if they got to get some stuff done and there's nobody else around, you plop the kid down in front of something they want to watch. So I got to thinking, I could do a nature show that would be so much cooler than this crap. So I'm thinking about the idea of potentially developing a children's show that teaches the skills that I teach and the principles behind them, but in a fun way, in a way that's going to keep them engaged and wanting to practice whenever they're not watching me. So yeah, I've actually storyboarded out a few episodes already. I think I'm going to start with like a snow shelter, since it is here in abundance right now. But yeah, there's these 2 particular channels. They both do the same thing. They look at tractors and combines and, drive them around, and they talk in goofy voices. And I'm just like, it's staggering how much money they make. And granted, I don't do this job for the money, but I think about what I would do if I got paid $10 million a month. I don't even... Let's just say that there would be a lot of very well taken care of people out there who deserve it. With this latest round of government hoo-ha, I have elders who are literally, having difficulties getting their food benefits. And I would go and take care of as many people as I possibly could. I was once listening to an interview with Andrew Dice Clay, the old the comedian from the 80s, who was very misogynistic, and but that was only one of his characters. He was actually a character comic, but that one stuck. And he was the first ever comedian to play Madison Square Garden and then many other arenas. And he actually, the day after he would do a show where he would make $1 to $2 million a night, he would spend the next day in the city walking around and giving people large sums of money to help make their lives better. I saw a clip of him finding a woman who was sleeping in her car with her 2 little kids because she left an abusive marriage. And he took her out to Long Island and bought her a house and had it fully furnished and set up a fund to pay the taxes in perpetuity. And that's why I wouldn't make a very good rich person, because there are so many people out there in need, myself included, for crying out loud. And it genuinely, I love. That's why I love being a caretaker, because it gives me the opportunity to do simple things for people that make their lives just a little bit easier. And that little bit can translate to a lot and can cause them to shift their whole outlook and go on to help somebody, and we create that wave, that flock of sandpipers. And last thing I'll say about the Midwest here is, man, I'm so glad to be in the Midwest again, where people are nice and courteous and hold doors for you. And if you smile at them, they don't look at you like you are, trying to murder them. Yeah, Midwest people are awesome. So shout out to the Midwest. And then, of course, can't wait to go do some ice fishing. So close. I actually could probably go now. So before I move on to some future classes and things like that, you may have noticed on my website and in my YouTube channel. So I have a friend who is one of the most amazing artists ever. You can give her a ballpoint pen and she will draw you something that looks like a photograph. And she makes a very, very good living off of YouTube, teaching people how to make coloring books. And so I was talking to her about how she does that, and she told me about this thing, Patreon. So Patreon is a website where, there's different tiers of membership. I think my cheapest one is $5 a month. And I post a certain amount of free stuff up there, but then there is stuff that is behind those paywalls. If you want extra material or extra this or extra that. I find it's a good way to keep me motivated and planning for the future. And so at some point, in the show notes of this, once we're done, I'll put the link to my Patreon page. And I'm going to try to, at least once a week, upload some exclusive stuff strictly to that channel. Some of it will be fully open to the public, but some of it will be behind, a paywall. And in this economy, and with what I'm trying to do as a creator, this is how people make a living these days who do what I do. Couple other things. So I've mentioned this before and I'm going to mention it again. I'll be finishing up the flyer for it as soon as I'm done with this live stream. Right around the weekend of April 10th, I am going to South Dakota to Hot Springs to my friend Scott Martin's house, and he and I are going to run an open to the public 2 to 3 day class. It's going to be limited to about 15 people, and it will have a sliding scale, of course, because with all my education, I want to make it as accessible as possible. And the reason why I do pay what you will with my online classes is because Zoom costs me $30 a month. Whether I have one person or 1,000, I don't have to get any more firewood or worry about any more knives or food. So that's why I'm able to do that. But when you're running a physical class and I'm looking at a 12-hour drive there and material collecting and things like that, but we will have a low number, and a high number to try to, accommodate as many people as possible. So yeah, I will share a photo of the flyer, and that will have more information. But it's basically going to be, I deign to call it a sacred order class. Sacred order being shelter, water, fire, food. Because in the way I've been adapting this new information I've received to my teachings, instead of separating the physical and the spiritual skills, I've learned to blend them both into one. And, nothing I teach today is anywhere near the same subject I would have taught 2 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to teaching in person again, as much as I love talking into a camera and pretending that you're all over there. So that's just one of a few physical classes I have planned for the warmer times of the year. So that's just the first one I want to announce. Another one that is so huge for me, and I was so honored when the offer was extended to me, is those of you may be familiar with a publication called Backwoods Magazine. It's published by a gentleman named Christopher Niergens, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He has written many books. He has a publishing company and he has a school. And he invited me to be a visiting online instructor, where I will be teaching a 4-part class through his organization. So, unfortunately, it won't be a pay what you will, because I'm teaching through his spot. But it will be a 4-part class that is a bit different from ones I've ran in the past. And whether you are a novice or a seasoned outdoors person, I guarantee you that you will get something from this class. And it's going to consist of 4 parts. Episode number 1 is going to be wilderness safety. I hate the word survival. I stopped using it. I even don't like the word safety. I want to do away with this whole concept of humans and nature as adversaries, and that nature is always trying to kill you, even though nature is always trying to kill you. But it doesn't have to be that way all the time. So, one of my many tasks I've taken upon myself is to dispel the myths and rumors that all of these BS reality TV shows have created, and teach it like it is, show it like it is. So first class is going to be wilderness safety. Then I'm going to do kind of an animal tracking class, an edible plants class, and then an awareness and natural movement class. Each class will be 2 hours long. They will occur every other week, starting on my father's birthday, Thursday, January 29th. And so we're going to start with that one, and then we've also started talking about potentially teaching in-person classes together. He's always been somebody who I've admired and read his work, and I was flabbergasted when I got handed a phone one night when I was down at Tom Alpel's river camp, and it was him. And he asked me if I'd like to be a visiting online instructor. So I was completely and totally honored by that, because part of my new constitution, or my new declaration, is I only want to be around people that energize me, that challenge me in constructive manners, and don't just try to throw obstacles in my path so they can get the dollar, because that's not what I'm about. All the work I do, I've said this a million times and I'll say it a million more, every decision I've made, every move I've made, everything I've done, I've always done based on the tools, information, and resources at my availability at that time. And I don't do this work to become rich or become famous. I do this work because I love it. And I think anybody who's watching this as a nature educator does the work for the same reason. But the main reason why I do this work is the miracles. I have seen just about every skill I teach cause anything from a micro to a macro um, miracle in someone's life. And I'm talking everything from magically curing stage 4 cancer to by simply showing somebody a different way to walk, ridding their body of 15 years of pain every time they had to move around with 20 minutes of talking on my part. That's a miracle to me, and that's truthfully, what keeps me going. And go I will. So, in closing, one other thing. So I am going to do an experiment this week I think it's on Tuesday night on the Trackalites group page on my Facebook, on the Facebook. I'm going to try to do a live stream there because I want to see how it differs versus YouTube. So you can tune in for that. You can go to my the Trackalites group page, and there should be an event up there. But then next week, I will not be streaming on Sunday night because I will be streaming on Saturday night instead. And there's a very particular reason why. January 3rd is the first full moon of the new year. What Grandfather called the moon of purification. And if you ever took a class with my dad, one of the first stories he tells is he says, when I came out of the woods, I was horrified by what I saw in society. I saw a land of the living dead, of people who walked around chasing the false gods of the flesh and not seeing the beauty and grandeur that was around them no matter where they were. And I wanted nothing to do with it. So the plan was, as soon as I was, old enough to carry my own weight, so to speak, 5, 6 years old, my mother, myself, and my older brother and my dad were going to disappear into the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana and homestead. And then he remembered a promise he made to Grandfather. Grandfather had asked him, said, "Grandson, one day you will have a son, and I ask a favor of you, that when your son is born on the first moon of purification, meaning the first full moon in January, I want you to take your son back to the sacred area in the Pine Barrens and lift your pipe in thanksgiving." So my dad, following Grandfather's wishes, did so. And what was once, and is now looking much better, but what was once a beautiful area with a swim hole, and it was incredibly sacred to them. It's not where the primitive camp is now. As my father rounds the bend, he comes upon an illegal garbage dump. And he followed Grandfather's instructions that night. He lifted his pipe after laying me down on a pile of garbage. And it was that night, combined with my mom's oh so gentle nagging, that made my father give up his dreams and start living his vision. So I want to honor both my mother and my father. Next Saturday night, exactly 47 years to the day of that night. Because I've been through a lot. I've suffered a lot of wounds physically. I'll see. Oh, it popped, but yeah, I actually closed my thumb in the door the other day. That was fun. I've endured a lot of wounds these last few years. Some are already healed. Some that, like Frodo, will never heal because of who caused them. but I've learned to move past it and not let it get me down, and remembered why I did everything I did these last 5 years, why I made every choice I made. Um, it was all to prepare me for today and tomorrow and the day after that. A day, a time that belongs to me as I truly see the world the way my father did and the way grandfather did. And I have the added bonus of not only stalking wolves knowledge to draw upon and my father's lifetime of experience, but this will be my 27th year as a teacher, so I've got a whole extra lifetime to draw on, and I have a whole bunch of new awesome skill sets that my father and my mother didn't possess, that just amplify what I have to say. So thank you all for being here on another one of these. As I mentioned, these will continue to evolve. Since next Saturday is a special event, the following Sunday will be the next official one of these. It's either going to be an actual skill, I'm thinking deer leg sinew, or an interview, because I want to mix it up a bit and and keep it interesting. Keep it interesting, as they say. And just for this Saturday's event, me and my super sweet newly found graphic design skills, I threw this together in a few minutes this morning, and it's what I'll close out the live stream with. So yeah, please try to join next Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Keep in mind, 6 p.m. Central Time, because I wanted to, give folks as much access as possible. So that gives folks on the East Coast a little bit more time to get done with work and things like that. There's never a truly perfect time, to run anything. But I promise you it will be an episode that you will not forget, because I've been digging in hard drives and putting together slideshows and all manner of things to share with you all as I continue on this crazy path called life, this crazy journey called life. So once again, thank you for being here. Pay attention to my social medias and things like that. If you want to go to my Trackalites group page, I'll actually put a button on my front page of my website that'll take you to that event as well. And yeah, I go for seamless, easy workflows. Makes my life so much easier. So thank you all again. Peace, love, joy, and purpose to you and yours in this holiday season. One last thing before I go. This is and I'm not a Christian, and I don't celebrate Christmas traditionally, but this is the first Christmas in 5 years that I won't be sitting alone, and I'm super excited for that. Because believe it or not, Christmas was a big deal in my house as a kid. So alright everybody, peace, love, joy, purpose. Get outside, hug a tree. If it's really cold where you live, strip down to your skivvies and see how long you can stand outside there. Allow that cold to pass through you, don't fight it. If you fight Mother Nature, you will get your butt kicked every time. And as always, I close these with this message to my parents. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night. Many blessings to you all. And I will see you either on Facebook on Tuesday or here on YouTube on Sunday. Good night, everybody, and thank you for being here. It means the world to me. And please, please, please help me spread the word, because I have been put in social media prison by nefarious forces, and only through grassroots organic growth will I break free of this prison, unless I suddenly become insanely wealthy and can buy my way out of it. But, yep, love you all. Stay happy, stay healthy. Have a wonderful night.